Welcome to Lesson 10 Workbook Exercises for Hebrew 1 and 2, Bright Old Testament 502-504 online edition, as we continue to work our way through Cal-Perfect weak verbs. Hopefully in this particular lesson, as we go through these exercises, you'll realize that weak verbs are nowhere near as daunting as they're made out to be, especially in the Cal-Perfect, and that you'll have more confidence moving forward. So let's get started. Typically, in these workbook exercises having to do with verbs, I skip the first section on these videos because it is a simple matter of identification, identifying the subject marker. However, because we're dealing with weak verbs, it's not the subject marker that changes, it's the actual verb stem. So I want to go over these and make sure that you understand why the verb stem has changed the way it has. So for the first one here, alu, we'll notice that there are only two consonants, the ayin and the lamed. There's a third consonant that's missing. The question is, where did it go? Why did it leave? And how would we parse this particular verb? I'll give you a moment to think about it. This first verb is a Cal-Perfect, third-person common plural, noticed by the shuric ending. It comes from the verb Allah, which is a third hey verb. Hey before a strong vowel, like shuric, will drop completely, leaving us with alu. What about the next verb? How would we parse this one? This verb is a Cal-Perfect second masculine plural. You'll notice the masculine ending with the mem, and the masculine plural ending with tav mem. The root verb is avad. Not many changes have taken place here, except that instead of having a simple shva underneath the ayin, we have patak shva, or a compound shva, under the ayin. Ayin is a guttural and does not take simple shva, it takes a compound shva. Typically this would be a kametz, but the kametz has reduced because of propretonic vowel reduction, since the accent has shifted all the way to the end of the verb under the tem, under the tav and the mem. So instead it reduces to a shva, which in this case, because it's a guttural, is a compound shva. What about the next verb? How do we parse this one? This verb is a Cal-Perfect second-person masculine singular, which we know because of the tav with the kametz. However, this is a weak stem because it has a guttural in the third position. What is unusual is that we would expect a guttural, in this case ayin, to have a compound shva if it has a shva, or a vocal compound shva. Instead, in this particular verb, it still takes a silent shva, closing out the syllable of mem plus a patak plus an ayin. This is surprising, not because it acts differently than the strong verb, but because this verb as a weak verb still acts like a strong verb, not doing what gutturals typically do. The same is true of the next verb, where again we have a guttural in the third position, in this case an aleph, and the verb does not behave the way that we would normally expect a word with a guttural in it to act. So how do we parse the next verb? In this particular verb, the aleph has quiesced completely, so that we get yatsanu. We get the aleph acting as though the aleph isn't even there. It's not really needed, but it is needed because it's part of the root. So rather than dropping out altogether, it remains. This differentiates it from words that might end in a hey, where the hey would drop out completely. So we have an aleph here that remains in the root, telling us that the root is yatsa. We have a perfect first common plural ending, the nun plus the shuric, telling us what kind of verb this is. But again, what's important here is to recognize that the aleph quiesces, goes silent, does not receive a shva or any sort of vowel, instead is just there to show you what kind of root it is. What about the next verb? How do we parse this one? This word is banata, a Cal-Perfect third-person feminine singular. The giveaway is the kametz hey at the end of the verb. We have a metheg under the kametz under the bait, telling us that this is a long a a kametz, not a kametz hatuf, a short O. It's not bonta, but banata. We have the root here of bana, to build. We have a third hey verb. Hey, when it is followed by another hey, will in a sense harden, as I like to think of it, becoming a tav, so that we have tav plus the kametz plus the hey here at the end of the verb. What about the next verb? The word here is a cow perfect second person masculine singular, karata. We know that it's a second masculine singular because of the tav kametz ending. However, you'll notice that there was another tav after the resh in the verb stem karat. This is not kara or any other form. It was karat, but the tavs have combined so that the final tav with a dagesh line in it has now become a tav with a dagesh forte in it. That forte, that doubling of the tav, allowing it to close the previous syllable. Because of the accent, we don't have to close the syllable, but in this particular case, that is indeed what has been done. The two tavs have combined so that we have the two tavs present in that dagesh. The next one is one that we've already covered, and that is the quiescent aleph, so you should be able to figure out the next verb fairly simply. The verb is a cow perfect first common singular, shown by the T at the end, tav plus huric yod, from nasa. Again, the aleph has completely quiesced, just like yatsa. This is very common with third aleph, or sometimes what are called lamed aleph verbs. What about the next one? This is a cow perfect second person masculine singular, again shown by the presence of the tav with the kametz at the end of the verb. In this particular stem, asa, the hey has become a yod. This will often happen when hey is followed by a tav. Hey followed by another hey usually makes the hey a tav. Hey followed by a strong vowel, like a shurik, makes the hey drop completely. Hey before a tav becomes a yod. Hey is fairly flighty, but it is somewhat regular in its flightiness, in that it typically becomes the same letter when it is followed by a particular letter. So in this case, followed by tav equals yod, asita. What about the next verb? How do we parse this one? This verb is a cow perfect 3fs, indicated by the kametz hey at the end of the verb. This verb is also a third hey verb, ra'ah, but again, hey before a hey becomes a tav, not a yod like hey does before a tav. Hey before hey renders it as a tav. We also have a compound shva under the aleph because, again, this is a guttural, and gutturals take compound shvas. So we have ra'atah. This is a cow perfect 3fs. What about the third hey verb in number 10? How do we translate and parse that word? This particular verb, asitem, is very similar to the one that we saw two before, asita. The difference here is that this is a strong ending, a tav plus a segol plus a mem, so it draws the accent. So it's not asitem, but asitem. We still have, though, the hey becoming yod before the tav. This case, not a tav as the final ending, but tav as the first consonant of the final ending. But still the pattern's the same. Hey before a tav becomes a yod. The answer to this next verb, banu, is a cow perfect 3CP. We have the shurik at the end, indicating that this is the third person common plural subject marker. It is from the verb bana. The hey has dropped off before the shurik. Normally, we would expect a verb with a shurik at the end to put the accent on the penultimate syllable so that we would have banu. However, because the hey has dropped, that changes things so that we still get banu. You can see the penultimate syllable being emphasized in the second verb here on the list, matzata. How would we parse this verb? This is a cal perfect 2ms, indicated by the tav with the comets ending. We also have the quiescent aleph from the root matzah. What about the next verb, savota? This one is a little bit more tricky because this comes from savav, meaning to go around. It's a cal perfect 2ms, which we can clearly see because of the presence of the tav with the comets. However, Geminits will insert a holum vav between the first two letters of the root and the subject marker, so that we get that holum vav in between the bait and the tav. Savota. This is tricky, but it's something you should be able to get used to. There are quite a few Geminits that have that second and third letter that are the same, so you will see this pattern pretty frequently. What about the next one? Samti. This kind of a verb is what we refer to as a hollow verb. It is two syllables, and we simply write in the vowel from the infinitive construct, which in this case is a heroic yod for its dictionary form, seem, to put her to place. Here we have an A-class vowel, a short A-class vowel, samti, and we know that this is a cal perfect 1cs because of the tav with the heroic. We notice that we have the A-class vowel instead of the I-class vowel, which will be the case in most perfect verbs, that it'll either be a short or a long A-class vowel instead of whatever the root syllable or the root vowel may have been in that syllable in the infinitive construct. The same is true in the next verb, so see if you can parse that one in light of what we just discussed. This is comnu. This is a cal perfect 1CP, first common plural, marked by the nun with the shurik. The root is kum, again using that vowel from the infinitive construct, a shurik in between the kof and the mem. It is not present in the perfect, again being replaced by the A-class vowel, so that we get comnu. In this next section, you are asked to translate the Hebrew phrase into English. As always, I'll give a 5-second pause, but chances are it will take more than 5 seconds to translate the Hebrew phrase. So take as much time as you need before hitting play and resuming the video. Try number 1. The phrase begins with a verb, alu. They went up. Third common plural marked by the shurik. This is from Allah with a hey, but the hey has dropped before the shurik. They went up. We then have the subject, ha'anashim, the men. The men went up. And then we have a phrase indicating where they went up to. To, indicated by the preposition el, the city, ha'ir. And then we have an adjective, which also has a definite article, linking it as an adjective with the city, hagodalah, the great city. Gadolah is feminine because ir, city, is also feminine. So the men went up to the great city. Go ahead and try number 2. The second phrase also begins with a verb, avartem. The tem indicates that this is a second person masculine plural. Again, the mem is the giveaway that this is masculine, and the tav tells us that it is second person. So we have avartem. Avar meaning he crossed. So in this case, you crossed. Metaphorically then, you transgressed. We then have a phrase that indicates what was transgressed, marked by the definite article on ha-Torah. Because it is definite, we also have a direct object marker. You will never have a direct object marker unless the noun is definite. In this case, it's made definite by that definite article. And mitzvot is also in a construct relationship with ha-Torah, so that we have the mitzvot of ha-Torah, the commandments of the law. This is not mitzvot, because the tzadeh has its own mark, a shva, underneath it. The vav, then, is a full consonant with a holum over it. So this is holum vav, but not as a long O, but as a vav with a long O. So this is vote, not just oat. We know this word comes from mitzvah, the commandment. So this is commandments, feminine plural, commandments of the law. Again, the feminine plural usually has oat with a holum vav. In this case, we have the vav plus the holum. So this is a tricky noun, but again, you should be able to figure out that this is commandments. Commandments of the law in the construct relationship with a definite article on both commandments and law. You transgressed or crossed the commandments of the law. Now let's move on to number 3. Number 3 starts also with a verb, which is fairly typical in Hebrew. Verbs seem to always get fronted. In this case, we have from the word halak a 3fs singular ending. We know that this means she went, or she goes, and then we have the subject, ha-isha, the woman or the wife. The woman or the wife went or goes, and then we have an indication of where she goes. El, the preposition, to, and then the temple, ha-hekal. The woman went to or goes to the temple. What about number 4? The fourth sentence also starts with a verb, shamata, with the accent over that penultimate second to last syllable, ma. That's because the final syllable, ta, is not strong enough with that vowel ending to draw the accent to itself the way that a strong consonantal ending would. We also have a 2ms ending marked by the tav plus the kamets. So this is you, singular, masculine, you heard or have heard, and then an indication of what has been heard. Et, the direct object marker, and again, mitzvot, commandments, the commandments, definite because it is in a construct with hamelech, even though kaf does not show up here because my computer, for whatever reason, does not like the letter kaf and refuses to print it. So pretend that there's a kaf after the lamed segel, hamelech, the king. You have heard the commandments of the king. And then finally, let's do the last one on this page. The verb is banata, built, she built. We have the hey that is dropped off after the nun before the presence of another hey, the 3fs ending of the kamets hey at the end of the verb. So the hey hardens in a sense to a tav, banata. The accent remains on that last syllable because it ends with a hey. We then have the subject, ha-malka, the queen, and then we have an indication of what she built, heikal gadol. You'll notice that there is no direct object marker because heikal gadol is not definite. There is no definite article, and as I mentioned, you can't use a direct object marker unless it is definite. So it is a great temple or a great palace, since heikal can mean temple or palace. Only 5 more to go in this section of exercises, so go ahead and take a stab at the first one here, which is number 6. The verb at the beginning of this verse is nasati, again with the accent on that second to last syllable, because the tav plus the hiric yod, marking the 1cs subject, is not strong enough, ending in a vowel, to draw the accent to itself. The accent remains in the prior syllable, nasati. We then have the direct object marker, et, followed by a definite noun, ha'abanim, and then a definite adjective, demonstrative adjective, ha'ela, these. So we have these stones. I lifted these stones. Go ahead then and take a stab at number 2, number 7 in your workbook. The second phrase here starts with a verb, asita, again with the accent on that second to last syllable, because the verb has an affixed subject marker of a tav plus a kamets, ending in a vowel, so not strong enough to draw the accent to itself. The subject marker is a 2ms, you, singular, masculine, you have done or have performed. Chesed is the direct object, although there is no marker. What you have performed is steadfast love. We then have a preposition, im, meaning with, followed by a 1CP pronominal object. You have done steadfast love, im, with us. Imanu, followed by a conjunctive, va, and ate, which is another word for with, because the ayin mem that follows is not with, but actually the word people. Ame. This is a masculine plural construct ending on the end of meaning people, so that we have ame haaretz, people of the land. And since aretz has the definite article, we also add the definite article onto ame, the people of the land. You have performed steadfast love with us and with the people of the land. Let's move on to the third one on your list here, number 8 in your workbook. The first word is a 1CS marked by the tav plus the hirik yod, ending on seem, to put or to place, again with the A-class vowel, samti, and the accent on the first syllable, because it's really the second to last syllable. Samti. Samti, I have set, and then what has been set? Et hakli, I have set the vessel. Hakli. This is actually kali, which is vessel, plus the definite article. Ha. Hakli, I have set the vessel, and where? Al hamatzveach, on the altar. Let's move on then to the fourth one here, number 9 in your workbook. The verse begins with a verb, kam, which means he arose. This is simply a 3ms ending, so there is no marker. We have the verb kum, which means to rise, but in the perfect, again, it will have that A-class vowel. Kam, he arose. We then have the subject, melech. I apologize for the giant K, but again, my computer does not like kaf. So we have melech, king, a king arose. But then we're followed by a adjective, hadash, a new king. A new king arose, and where he arose? Al eretz mitzrayim, over the land of Egypt. We have a lack of a definite article here. However, because Egypt is definite and actual place, we still translate it as the, over the land of Egypt. Well then finally, let's move on to the last one on this list, number 10 in your workbook. This final phrase begins with a verb, ba'u, a 3CP ending. They, indicated by the shurik. This is the word bo, which means to come or to enter, although we only see the holem vav in between the bait and the aleph in the infinitive construct. Here in the perfect, we have simply an A-class vowel, ba'u, they came, followed by the subjects, hanavi'im, the prophets, and ha-kohanim, the priests. The priests and the prophets came, and then we have an indication of where they came, ha'ira, the city. You'll notice that there is a kametz hey at the end of ha'ira. That is because this is the directive hey. Ir is already a feminine word, does not need a kametz hey to be feminine. Instead, this indicates that it is to the city. It's directive. It shows to or direction towards something. Towards the city, to the city. You can tell that it is not the 3FS ending because a 3FS ending ends in a hey, in a consonant, and would have drawn the accent. Instead, the accent remains on the second to last syllable, so that this is ha'ira, not ha'ira. Again, a directive hey. Something to keep in mind, especially when we're talking about verbs related to direction and travel. The priests, the prophets, they came to the city. That brings us to another set of exercises. You can use your Bible to check the final set of exercises. If you have any questions, be sure to let your professor know. Make sure you turn in your homework and continue working on to the next lesson.